The first Jewish U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Justice Brandeis, graduated from Harvard Law School at age 20 in 1877. Brandeis not only graduated at age 20, but he graduated with the highest GPA in that school's history. But during his time at Harvard and Harvard Law School, an anti-Semitic professor by the name of Peters did what he could to cause him trouble. On a major oral exam, Brandeis responded brilliantly to all the questions. Unhappy and frustrated, the anti-Semitic professor asked Brandeis the following: "Mr. Brandeis, if you were walking down the street and found a bag of wisdom and another bag with a lot of money, which one would you take?" Without hesitating, Brandeis responded, "The one with the money, of course." Peters, smiling sarcastically, said, just like a Jew, "Unlike you, I would have taken the wisdom." Brandeis shrugged indifferently and responded, "Each one takes what he doesn't have." There's more. True story. The professor's hate for Brandeis came to a finale when he scribbled on his final exam the word idiot and handed it back to Brandeis. A few minutes later, Brandeis got up, went to the professor, and said to him in a dignified but sarcastically polite tone, "Professor Peters, you didn't give me a grade, but you did autograph the exam sheet." Fortunately, Brandeis did get the last laugh. And Peters' attempts to hurt Brandeis never succeeded. He graduated Harvard in 1877 and went out to have a brilliant career. And like Brandeis, many of us were blessed to attend universities. But I would guess that most of us did not have to deal with openly anti-Semitic professors like Peters. Instead, we got to study with some of the best minds and create so many positive memories. Until recently, we might have expected today's students to enjoy the same kind of enriching and supportive college experience. Yet something has changed. Our Jewish students today are experiencing a different type of campus life. For example, this past May, a panel discussion was conducted on anti-Semitism at Columbia University. As you can imagine, Jewish students and parents broke down, sharing what a difficult year it had been at Columbia. 4 deans attended the event. One was the dean of undergraduate student life. Another was a dean for student and family support. And during the panel discussion, the deans were texting each other. But instead of sharing ways to console and help the Jewish students, the deans were caught dismissing their concerns, even making fun of them. One dean texted that the Jewish students, quote, "come from such a place of privilege, it's hard to hear the woe is me." Another dean wrote, "It's amazing what money can do." One suggested the students were using their so-called anguish for fundraising potential. In this day and age, could you imagine deans at any university texting such hateful comments about any other minority group? One of the deans still holds his same position. The other 3 refused to apologize, and they were still employed, and so they finally resigned in August. Now 2 personal examples. This summer, I was speaking to my nephew who was preparing to leave for his freshman year. He was nervous about the social aspects of university life. Being the good rabbi, I suggested that he check out his university Hillel. But he told me, "Uncle Brian, I'm afraid to go there." He was concerned that he would then be targeted by other students for being Jewish. In this past April, one of my children attended a typical Saturday night college party at an acquaintance's apartment. Soon, a few students approached the party's host, asking the host to tell my kid to leave. Why? because they had seen my child at an Israel event on campus. So it made these students uncomfortable because my child supported Israel. Unfortunately, the host agreed and asked my kid to leave. I know my child is not alone. Since last October 7th, anti-Semitic incidents on campuses have spiked by 700%. Hillel has documented over 1,800 anti-Semitic incidents, the highest number ever recorded for a single academic year. A recent study found that 55% of those surveyed were or knew someone who was physically threatened because they were Jewish. Jewish students have been called baby killers. Professors have called out students for supporting Israel. Dorm rooms, frat houses, and campus buildings have been vandalized. All of this and more is happening on campuses throughout our country. And I could give you countless examples of stories I've heard from some of your children. 56% of Jewish college students report feeling scared and worried. And yet here's the amazing thing. Today, students and professors pride themselves on being completely accepting of students' differences, where discrimination against any student isn't tolerated. So how could some professors and some students be treating some of our students so badly? How could this be happening to our children? They're good kids, peace-loving, hardworking. I had to find an answer. As a rabbi and as a father of 3 children currently in graduate school and college, here's what I discovered. To begin, let us remember that since many of our grandparents and great-grandparents came to this country with nothing, we as Jews have worked hard for the blessings we have attained. In our people's long history, we have flourished more in America than in any other place. We made it here because this great country was not like any other. It wasn't just a constitutional system that prohibited discrimination on the basis of religion. It was a unique value system that prioritized the rights of the individual, encouraging a majority of Americans to work for the genuine generational progress of equal opportunity for all people. But in recent years, a new approach to education has swept across too many of our universities, one that has replaced the American idea that equal opportunity for the individual is the key to a just society. This new approach demands outcomes based on one's background rather than on one's individual achievements. Now, nothing could be farther from the ideas behind Yom Kippur. On this day, we're judged based on our own merits. We're held accountable for our personal actions, regardless of our background. But according to this new system of beliefs, it's all about your particular ancestry, where you come from. And an overrepresentation of a particular group suggests not talent, not hard work, but unearned privilege. For example, some actually question, we Jews make up just 2% of the American population. So how could it be that for so long, we comprise more than 2% of so many universities? How could we have such unparalleled success compared to our numbers? The conclusion is easy for those who believe that as a group, we've attained too much. Our percentages are not fair. Our scores are considered too high. They falsely claim that we must be part of some kind of conspiracy to exploit others, to divvy up our undeserved spoils. Yes, too many people today in this great country, especially on our college campuses, wrongly believe that all Jews are successful for all the wrong reasons. And on many campuses, the concept of success is considered a privilege, resting on the false belief that no matter what, the haves are merely beneficiaries of a rigged system. My friends, these simplistic, binary classifications of entire groups of people seem to have taken root in the minds of many administrators, professors, and students. You're either part of the oppressed or an oppressor. And we American Jews have been defined as the quintessential oppressors. This is actually not a new belief. For too many centuries, all the way through the Middle Ages, anti-Semites on the extreme nationalistic right shared one lie with the extreme Marxist left. We Jews use our excessive power to control the world. And today, more than ever, this awful, powerful belief with anti-Semites is rearing its ugly head here in America. In alt-right racist circles from the extreme right and on the extreme left, now openly in many of our universities. No matter what side it comes from, the labeling of Jews as oppressors has become a permission slip for anti-Semitism. I never thought I would see it here. In my lifetime, this is the first time I have seen it, especially on college campuses. In one poll earlier this year, 16% of non-Jewish college students expressed open hostility towards Jewish students because they believed in the lie that we have too much power. 16%. And unfortunately, these findings align with other polls, including those conducted even with middle school students. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, to make it even more difficult for our students, our Jewish state is deemed to be the world's worst oppressor. Based on similar falsehoods, Israel is considered to be the last remnant of European colonialism, and therefore deserves to be attacked and eventually, God forbid, destroyed. October 7th woke us up to what was already happening. For years, our Jewish students have been grouped into that oppressor category, which offers them little protection. And because Israel is falsely labeled as the ultimate aggressor state, they've also become targets simply for being Zionists. So instead of October 7th creating more sympathy for our students, it quickly became open season to attack them. Just a few hours after the October attack, 31 student organizations at Harvard issued a joint statement, quote, "We hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. The apartheid regime is the only one to blame." At other universities, professors actually signed statements suggesting that the October attack was completely justified. A few months later, we watched the presidents of major universities embarrass themselves before Congress by refusing to unequivocally state that calling for genocide of Jews violated their university's code of conduct. In March, a poll of young adults found that 17% expressed sympathy towards Hamas. Of course, 1% is too many, but 17% of young adults in this country sympathy for terrorists. And then came the widespread campus protests. Like many of you, I watched some of those protests online. I was shocked, not by the hate I saw for Israel. I expected to see that, but by the open hostility towards our students. Signs expressing open support for terrorists, calling for terrorism here. Protesters calling on Jewish students to go back to Poland. Speakers openly telling their supporters to watch out for Zionists on campus, their code word for Jews. And at some universities, which are typically quick to discipline those who made comments that triggered students' safe spaces, suddenly they rediscovered their support for free speech once it was anti-Semitic students engaging in controversial conduct. We saw once again that Jewish students were the only minority, the only one, not fully protected. It was troubling to watch protesters upend campus life, from exams to graduations, block our students from walking freely on campus because they were so convinced their cause was beyond question. It's not, and someone should have made that clear to them. For centuries, colleges existed to give students the conceptual tools to understand the complexities of our world. But today, at too many universities, students are instead being fed these simplistic, ideological categories that blind them to reality. And I wish I could tell you it was getting better. In August, an anti-Israel campus group at the University of North Carolina announced its right to use violence, saying the oppressors will never grant us full liberty, so the oppressed must seize liberty with their own hands. It was reported that professors openly helped them with these statements. And 3 days ago, you may have seen this, the most prominent pro-Palestinian student group at Columbia walked back an apology it had issued for a student who said last year, Zionists don't deserve to live. And to top it off, they added an explicit call for violence. Quote, we support liberation by any means necessary, including armed resistance. Statements like these put our students in danger. It's only October, and yet there's already been multiple attacks against Jewish students this academic year. Now, I hope you understand why this is happening on college campuses, that we all see this is a serious moment for our students, and why I felt it was necessary to bring it up on the most important night of the year. It's depressing, and it's frightening. But before it gets even worse, is there anything you and I can do? The great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel once said, the opposite of goodness is not evil, it's silence. Today is not the time for silence. The one choice that is not acceptable is to do nothing. A student leader recently said, people often ask me, when looking at anti-Semitism on college campuses, has the golden age of American Jewry ended? He said, my answer is simple, not without a fight. Not without a fight. Tonight, I want to offer 3 suggestions. 1, can you and I do more to keep our students safe? For example, the U.S. Senate should finally pass the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which already passed the House of Representatives earlier this year in an overwhelming bipartisan vote. This would give the Department of Education the ability to enforce federal anti-discrimination laws in order to fully protect our students. And in the meantime, because all forms of discrimination should be treated with the same attention and vigilance, can we demand that university administrators treat anti-Semitism with the same seriousness as all forms of hatred? We expect them to hold all students accountable for their actions, enforcing the rules already in place to stop illegal protests and encampments. And can we insist that university heads support all their students, enforce all the rules equally, or step down? And if they don't, let's send our students to those colleges who have stood up against anti-Semitism. Let's choose those schools where our children can be safe. Because the choices you and I make as families can make a difference. Number 2, a lot of damage has been done to higher education. It may take decades to repair. According to Gallup, in 2015, 57% of Americans expressed high confidence in college education. Last year, the number had fallen to 36%. And some distinguished schools are now reporting a drop in applications. But you and I know, having a top-tier education system where all minorities are protected is not only good for us, it's good for our country. Fighting for all the universities is the least we owe our children in this country that we love. And let's not forget, there is still some excellence in today's academia. Plenty of terrific, fair-minded professors and administrators, plenty of good reasons to send our children to college. But we have work to do. The intellectual decay is widespread, and it won't stop spreading until universities recommit to their core mission. Their core mission is not to tell our students what to think. That's not their job. Their job is to help our young learn how to think on their own. Is that crickets or someone's phone? It's my fault. I forgot to tell everyone to turn off their ringers. I think that's a real cricket. I don't know what that is. Okay. It must be an anti-Zionist who put that in there. Okay. My last point, number 3. I remember last spring when I asked my son if he was okay, as the protests grew on the University of Texas campus. My son told me it was frightening, but he was fine because he had a strong Jewish community he could count on. When I speak to our college students, they often tell me that having an active campus community makes a huge difference. Can you and I do more to support those great student organizations that are there for our children? Hillels, Campus Chabads, other Jewish student organizations that help our students. I'm thankful to the campus Jewish professionals for doing what they do so well, being there for our students and inspiring them to be the leaders now and in the future. And I also want to thank those students that are here tonight. You've shown resilience and care for one another in such challenging times. Many of you have been unafraid to demonstrate your pride in being Jewish. And by doing so, you've brought us a lot of pride. We're proud that many of you have had the courage to stick to your Jewish values, your Zionism, and with your fellow Jews. Because all of you, our students, deserve a safe learning environment, free from harassment and discrimination. Justice Brandeis didn't have that. Many of your grandparents, parents, and people like me had that safe campus experience. And I hope and pray, working together, so will you. On our most significant night of the year, I want our young people to know, whether you're in college now or heading to college in the future, we as your parents and your grandparents, rabbis and synagogue community, we will not stop. We will not stop until all college campuses are safe for our Jewish students. We owe that to you, our children, and we owe it to the future of our people in this extraordinary country. Thank you.